Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope you're doing well out there. If you guys could subscribe, that'd be great. If you want to hit the like button, that's beneficial as well. Comment. Don't be too vicious. Let's get into it as we are here on play-in day. The Miami Heat getting set for the Chicago Bulls. Today could be the day that the Miami Heat season comes to an end. We shall see. One piece of news that we do know is that Jimmy Butler and the Golden State Warriors are making their way to the playoffs, and the Miami Heat, they got themselves a first-round pick. Now, they will determine which pick it is coming up on Monday at 3 p.m. There is a drawing. I believe it is between the Warriors, Memphis, and Milwaukee, and that'll determine the order if the Heat are picking 18, 19, or 20. But that is the Heat's pick. They are now officially with asset, at least this year. Will the Miami Heat have a second pick? We'll learn that later on tonight. And obviously, if tonight ends, we'll have a full reaction of that and everything that goes with it. I'm debating whether or not to go live tonight. It'll probably be, if the season ends tonight, we might do a live eulogy. If the season goes on, we'll probably recap it and kick it to Friday. But I've said this. If they win tonight, I feel very good about Friday. This is the game that scares me out of all of them. Last night, if you guys didn't check out, I did stay up for Jimmy Butler and the Golden State Warriors win over the Memphis Grizzlies. Jimmy looked incredible, to be fair. I mean, there's no other way for anyone to slice it. The dude had absolute juice in his legs. He was getting after every ball. He was stealing. He was setting up teammates. Had the 3-ball going early on in the first quarter. And then Steph really shut the door. He really put it down there with 2 big threes. But Jimmy was absolutely terrifying yesterday. He was very, very good for Golden State. And the way that he looked in that season finale against the Clippers, I was like, man, this is going to be a big tell. And I think that him being able to get himself in that position puts Golden State in a nice spot, because I don't think that they had a prayer against OKC. Houston, I think, is still a challenge for them, but I think it's much more winnable getting yourselves together, figuring things out. You always want to take on those best teams with the most amount of playoff experience possible. These catching the guys cold, like you might catch a game, but I think it's tough to expect, you to really land the haymaker. Some weird stuff has to happen, as we have seen that. We've had that experience right down here personally, right? Like some weird stuff has to happen when those games go down. But I thought Jimmy looked good yesterday. I don't think I think if you're, whatever your opinion was of it, I still think it's a tough bracket to come out of there if you're Golden State, because you now have Houston and then the Lakers and then most likely, OKC as your 3 teams that you're taking on. That's as tough a resume as it's going to get for anybody outside of just basically taking on OKC from jump. So we'll see from it. But he looked absolutely great. There has been a lot of fodder that's been around in these last couple of days in Miami Heat land. Been a lot of chitter chatter. I saw today a lot of people were upset. The 2 things people are upset about right now in Heat land for dumb takes. And I really do think we are getting dumber with the takes, but I also think we have more access to dumb takes than ever before. Used to be, if you had a dumb take, we just had to deal with your tweet. Now everybody's got a podcast that they're going out there and spitting at. And, I got Lou Williams today, who's talking about how the Miami Heat fans are front runners, which I was like, all right, dude, well, congratulations. Like, you've come up with an original take from 2002. Very, very, very good for you. Fantastic. What else you want to say? They show up late. What other takes you want to have? I almost feel like it's not even worth defending stuff like this anymore. This stuff used to get me mad. Like, there's a Marlins video going on right now of nobody at the game last night because it was a Tuesday in Miami and nobody was at Marlins Diamondbacks yesterday. And they're like, well, the Marlins were over 500. The D-backs were over 500. How MLB's got has a problem in Miami? And it's like, well, first of all, what have you just come out from under a rock? And second of all, you think like 15 games of nobody being able to name any of these guys. We're just learning who the hell Matt Mervis is. We know Sandy Alcantara and that's it. You think that the Miami Marlins you think the Miami Marlins have captivated buzz? The Marlins are going to have to be nearly a damn near 90-win team to get any September buzz. And that's saying something. Like, they're going to need to put together a insane run of years here to thaw the frost over the heart of those who love that team. But the Heat fan, dude, I was in the building for the Wizards game with how much those fans in that building wanted to see that team get over the finish line against the game that was not beneficial for them to win, and the building was rocking. And they went home heartbroken when Bub Carrington got that game winner. I almost feel like the Lou Williams thing to say things like that is delusional and a waste of time to get crazy about that. So I'm not too crazy about it. I just think, like, dude, if you're still making this claim, you've obviously not just been to a Heat game in the last, I don't know how long. The other thing that I talked about this on the radio show, but Rich Paul's take on Chris Bosh was unbelievably dumb. He was on the Pat McAfee show, and he said a lot of complimentary things about Bosh, about being egoless and a professional and taking a back seat, but basically was trying to make the point that he's not a fan of big threes and that Miami wasn't really a big three because Chris Bosh was egoless and professional and took a step back. And I talked a lot about it on the radio show, so I don't want to double down the rant, but if you guys want to go listen, I'm going to put the clip up on the 560 YouTube page because this one just made me absolutely mental. I can't deal with the disparaging of Chris Bosh that goes on left and right. Here I go. I'm going to get into it anyway. Just because, one, I don't understand it. I don't understand the need to put down somebody to build the legacy up of your client and friend, because LeBron's already at the mountaintop. There's no need for them to add stories to where he is. He's already at the top. Everybody knows his greatness. And so now to act like, oh, it wasn't really a big three that he was a part of. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And Chris Bosh was a monster part of those championships. There is no debate about this. There's no reframing of this. If your definition of a big three is just Kevin Durant and two scoring guards, because that's what he's tried to do to make things happen, what I would do if I was Rich Paul trying to frame this argument better for your guy is I would say you need to pick your big threes the right way, and you need to make sure you have somebody who has the right attitude of making a big three work. But I listened to him, and he goes, yeah, and then you look at the Celtics, and that really didn't work. And I'm like, you just talked about two teams that went to 6 finals and won 3 championships. What are you talking about, Rich? I don't understand it. I don't even understand where you're going with that and where the hell this is all coming from. But, maybe in today's day and age where the cap is so punitive, it wasn't like that back in the day with Chris Bosh and LeBron James joining the Miami Heat. It still took a majority of the cap space. You basically had room for 2 players who made more than the minimum with Mike Miller and Udonis Haslem. And then you got exceptions a couple of years later, and guys would actually play for, this is crazy to say, but like $3 million or $4 million is what Ray Allen and Shane Battier would play for. And they were like, yeah, because I just want to win a championship. Now, today's day and age, what is the mid-level exception? $13 million? And like it's almost like a slap in the face to somebody to play for that little money. So, yeah, the economics of the game are just nowhere where they. And by the way, LeBron had a huge part of that. LeBron is a big reason for the business of that. And by the way, so was the big three in general. But I don't get that, this idea. This has been the second time in, I think, 3 weeks that Chris Bosh's importance to the Heat's championships has been diminished. This also happened with Stephen A. Smith talking about Melo coming to the Heat, which, by the way, that would have maybe been a problematic big three, because we were already sitting here for years talking about the big guys. It was Drunas Ilgauskas and Eric Dampier, Jamal McGlure and Dexter Pittman, and all these guys trying to play center next to Chris Bosh. And tried Eddie Curry, tried bringing him, tried Greg Oden. all of these guys, but meanwhile, it just ended up being like, yeah, Chris Bosh was your big with a little side of Birdman off the bench every now and then. And I don't know. It's disappointing to see people try and do this. They do this with D Wade too. And no one's here telling you LeBron's not maybe the best player of all time. Great. But it's compared it to like with Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, right? Where a lot of his teammates were pissed. Scottie Pippen, the most vocal among them, that it felt like, hey, you're already Michael Jordan on the top. Why do you feel the need to have a documentary lifting you up even higher and diminishing what we did? It's silly at that point. So bad job by Rich Paul on the Pat McAfee show. Do better with your explanations, dude. It really was. And Chris Bosh, I mean, the true facts of it are, and this is it, Chris Bosh is a fucking legend. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a champion. He's a multi-time All-Star. He's one of the most polished offensive forwards that there's been. And he turned himself into a hell of a defender with the Miami Heat as well. And anybody who tries to tell you otherwise or diminish or bring down, you're probably either just a preteen or an idiot. So I don't know what to tell you. That's just the way that is. So the other thing that was thrown on the doorstep this week was a hot take from Marcus Morris, of all people, one of the Morris twins, who was on First Take this week. He's been doing guest spots on First Take, and they discussed, and he said that Giannis, if he loses in the first round, which would be 3 straight years of him losing in the first round, Giannis Antetokounmpo should go to the Miami Heat. He then started to get like too cute. He's like, and then Dame should go too. And I was like, all right, it's not that I don't like that, but calm down, Marcus. But the big bombshell was obviously the Giannis thing. And let's just take these. I'll do the first part with the Dame thing, right? Which will tie into Chris Bosh. I can't think of anything more tragic than Damian Lillard not ending up with the Miami Heat in recent memory. It basically killed the Jimmy Butler era, the whole showdown with Joe Cronin. And the fact now that he's dealing with blood clots and is trying to get clearance and is going to miss the start of the playoffs is really, really, really crappy, because I love Damian Lillard. I'm a big fan of Damian Lillard. I think he's one of my favorite players in the league that's never worn a Heat jersey. I'm a huge Dame fan. If Dame would have ended up on the Heat, I would have been thrilled. I still would take Damian Lillard on the Heat, but I got to think that happening to him would nuke any chance of Damian Lillard ever being on the Heat, because it's just PTSD. There's no shot that somebody who has that they're dealing with, and they went through what they went through with Chris Bosh, I can't think there's any shot that they're going to go after Damian Lillard. I would find that highly, highly unlikely. The Giannis thing is definitely an interesting one, because people like to make it seem like, well, will Giannis stick it out in Milwaukee? I have no idea. I mean, if he signs Uber Duber Maxes or whatever those are, sure. There's that benefit of that. But I got to think, if he doesn't, and you're Giannis, this is what I'll give the Milwaukee Bucks props on, because the Heat haven't been able to do that with their stars, right? They went and got him Drew Holiday. They gave up a bevy of picks, and then they were able, because of Joe Cronin being a disgruntled rat bastard, was able to get Damian Lillard for him. So Milwaukee's made some big swings. They even get him Kyle Kuzma at the trade deadline. The Bucks have done all they can do to try and appease Giannis Antetokounmpo. So if he does end up leaving, I really cannot blame the Milwaukee Bucks. They've won a championship for him. And I think at that point, you just got to accept, like, hey, he just didn't want to live here anymore. He wanted to go explore. And I think that Giannis has given ideas to that, right? Like, even joking about, oh, it'd be cool if all the European guys would go to big markets. And I know that he was trolling a little bit, but he's also mentioned this in like other interviews about, going to other markets or moving on to other places and things like that. I will say, to me, he's the only star that's out on the blocks here about people that I'd be willing for the Heat to part with Kel'el Ware for. He's the only guy. Zion, KD, Trey, Ja, all these guys. None of these guys I'm trading the Kryptonian for. There's no shot. I'm not going down that alley. Then you also ask about, okay, well, would you trade Bam Adebayo for him? And I gotta say, I wouldn't, because I just think that if you're gonna do this, it's done with the idea of having Bam, Tyler, and Giannis together and seeing what that is. But the other element to it is the agent tie. They have the same agent. And we know, I would think as an agent, if you knew one client was ready to get out of his location, but the other one was Heat culture all the way, through and through, he signed the extension. We know how these agent ties work, right? Talked about this with Mike Miller being John Morant's agent. Rich Paul, one of the reasons that the Heat Big Three came together. They were all with CAA at the time before Clutch Sports was a thing. The agent ties are a big thing when it comes to the free agents. And I just think that Bam and Giannis being repped by the same guy, I got a hard time believing that gets parted. You had Stephen A. Smith out here and he goes, well, you can't do that because if you're Giannis, you're going to have Pat Riley running the organization. And that's your look for the long term when a guy's that age. And I was like, I'm a little taken aback by Stephen A. I'm a little disappointed that a guy who is claiming to be so respectful of Pat Riley after all these years is now acting like, he's some fossil who's, incapable of running the organization, and also acting like he's the only person in there doing anything for the organization. Stephen A. Smith makes it seem like Pat Riley's just wandering around the Kaseya Center by himself with all of this, which is a little bit strange. I would say the Heat, if they're going to have continuity and keep going, they have that built in as good as anybody does already. Now, I'm sure that some fans are, fed up and spoiled, and maybe you want to go in a completely different direction. Fine, whatever. That's a different argument for a different day. But I found it weird that Stephen A. was making it seem like Pat Riley's age was a detriment to getting Giannis Antetokounmpo there. I found that to be a little bit strange.